Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Taped Podcast, the most acid-fueled podcast in the world. We are your hosts, myself, Mickey T.
Nostalgia.
And Louis.
And
I return.
he has returned. And for what purpose? We are ranking every single album and a couple of other projects from the man himself, Richard D. James, a.k.a. Aphex Twin. Yeah.
Man who licks windows.
Yes. Honourable mention, window licker, of course.
Hell yeah.
The man who I was born in the same hospital as Aphex Twin, making me the Aphex Twin.
Yeah, now Louis destined to make some crap IDM.
Yes, crap IDM.
He's just going to pull up some Ableton and just create some fucking terrible IDM.
It's not IDM, it's SDM, stupid dance music. It's a good market. Appeal to the masses.
And it sounds less pretentious as well, so there's that.
I love...
Yeah,
dude,
sort of
IDM is the dumbest
stupid.
genre name ever. Imagine, I just cannot imagine listening to fucking, like... listening to, like, Alberto Balsam in your room alone and
Number
just
4.
doing We Dance. Like,
Yes.
it's just not gonna happen.
No, not a chance.
Yeah,
Bruh.
dancing to number 4 off of Ambient Works 2.
Yeah.
Bruh,
Hell
the
yeah.
party's whack until Scotch Key 7th Path comes on.
Yes.
Fucking nuts.
Like I mentioned, we're going to be ranking the 6 main Aphex Twin albums, and we're also going to be including the Come to Daddy EP, and we're going to be including Chosen Lords, even though that's technically under Aphex. So
Yeah, I think just it's a good representation of his stuff under Ape and classics. You forgot to mention classics.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
classic
we have some
shit. Yeah.
compilation classics.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Just to spice it up a little.
Yes.
indeed. So, without wasting any more time, boys, what was your weakest pick? We'll just say he does not have a single bad album, so we'll just say
Number 9.
weakest in our opinion. So,
The 9th album.
all right, who wants
Ninth
to go
album,
first?
yeah.
Like number 9.
Number 9. I chose Chosen Lords.
What? Mick?
Louis, you go first.
We need to have an order for this.
Okay. Yeah, what the fuck? This podcast is shit.
Absolutely.
Jesus.
Okay, me, then Louis, then Mick.
Okay. So go.
I already
oh.
went. I chose
Oh, whatever.
Chosen
Okay.
Lords.
Fuck. Chosen Lords. I picked Drux.
I picked Cyril.
Oh.
Hold.
Hey.
Hey.
There's some
Okay, we've gone off to a bad start, everyone.
interesting things.
Okay.
Should I start?
All right, let's go.
Yeah. Start the way we
Right,
went.
as
Yeah.
we already
Just did an order.
brief. You think like
me.
almost 30 episodes in we'd have this figured out. How to transition from one person to another.
Absolutely.
Chosen
not.
Lords.
Absolutely.
We already
not.
mentioned, but he has no bad albums. I still think this album's great. It's a very bouncy, mechanical compilation of really interesting acid techno IDM tracks. All the tracks on here have a weird kind of carefree, more loose atmosphere to them. And aesthetic, it just feels like a more kind of toned down, less serious effort from AFX in this case. And, obviously this is a compilation album, so it's not the most cohesive project from start to finish when it comes to, tying everything together. But I still think it has a plethora of amazing tracks that make this a very worthwhile listen and bring everything together. And, in general, I do feel like his AFX stuff is a bit overlooked because he definitely did a lot of interesting stuff and brought a lot of interesting ideas to the table under that moniker. But yeah, when it comes to ranking the albums, I have to put this last, even though I do really like it.
So I chose Drux, and Drux is kind of a weird album. It doesn't sound too much like many of his other albums, I think at least. Kind of strays away from the more IDM stuff, and it's more electronic, and some of it, there's a few piano-driven bits in there. Particularly, tracks that I enjoy would be April 14th, which is it's a weird track. It's not him playing the piano, it's coded piano MIDI that he put through kind of this interesting piano machine, which is like half computer, piano sort of thing, which I found interesting. There's a lot of eclectic kind of mental sounding tracks as well, like Mount St. Michael and all those. It's kind of more experimental than anything else I think he put out at the time. But out of all the albums, it's definitely not my favourite. But it's still very good. I still really enjoy it. And the titles are completely unpronounceable. My only real kind of gripe for the album is some of these tracks are a bit half-baked and don't really seem like you put full effort into them, or they're kind of just little B-sides. And the second disc is just a bit too long. But apart from that, it's still a pretty solid album. Definitely a more unique part of his whole discography. And that's why I put it at number 9.
Alright, I chose Cyril for my number 9, and Cyril's a good album, but I do think it is Aphex Twins' weakest project. But that isn't a bad thing in this case, because the production on this album is just as good as I would want it to be on an Aphex Twin album. But I feel like we've heard a lot of these different kind of styles before from Aphex Twin, done better on previous albums. And there are plenty of great tracks on here that keep me engaged, that are pretty great to listen to. But there may be like 2 tracks that just don't really stand out to me as much as others, and they aren't as great as an Aphex Twin standout track could be. Without a doubt, it's still good. It keeps what makes Aphex Twin good, but it just left me a bit underwhelmed, and I'd just rather listen to other Aphex Twin projects over this. But like I said, it has its standouts.
We'll do best and worst tracks then.
Yeah.
My favourite tracks on Chosen Lords were Phoenix Funk 5, Crying in Your Face, Silenin, XMD58, and my favourite track he's ever released under the AFX moniker, PW Steel LD Pinch D. My least favourite tracks were Boxing Day and Batine Acid.
Oh, fuck, here we go. Okay, so my favourite picks off of Trucks would be April 14th, Cock, Genway Thek, and Mount St. Michal. I'm just going to call it Al. Fucking, it's close enough.
Alright.
Probably worst track, probably 54, Kibiru Beats. That's about it.
Okay, my favourite tracks from Cyril are Mini Pop 67, X-Mix Eva 10, Circlon 14, Puppet 4, and Aston Stanza, I think. I might be retarded for pronouncing it like that. Worst track, 4-Bit 90.
Don't worry, it's Welsh. No one can pronounce it. Okay, so we're on to the next pick, number 8. So
my
Michal,
number 8 pick.
What you have at number 8?
My number 8 pick was Drugs.
My number 8 pick was Chosen Lords.
My number 8 pick was also Chosen Lords.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Lovely bit of agreement. Love it. Love to see it.
We love to see it. Rarely seen on this podcast.
I'll start again. I think that Drugs is fantastic, and it has some of his best tracks. But I do think the track listing and the album as a whole is a bit too bloated. I don't think all of the tracks really tread any new ground. There's some that emphasis on some that just kind of seem to rehash older ideas and are definitely more indicative of some of his older stuff, which is fine, but it just doesn't make for the most interesting listen. That being said, a lot of stuff on Drugs is legendary and, among his best stuff. And while it's not as concise as, say, Richard D. James' album, and it's also not really as rewarding to listen through as Selected Ambient Works too, it's a really good album, and it's just kind of in a bit of an awkward situation where it's has some rewarding tracks and some amazing tracks, and it's definitely worth listening, but it's hard to really sit down and get motivated to listen through this whole album when it is so long, and it does have a number of tracks that aren't as interesting. Although overall, I still think it's a really good album.
So my number 8 pick was Chosen Lords. I didn't really delve into much AFX stuff prior to doing this podcast. I kind of stuck with the main stuff, so this is kind of completely new to me. I hadn't heard any of it. It reminds me a lot of the old kind of analog bubble bath days. That was one of his first singles. There's a lot more kind of heavily experimental moments on this. It's a collection of EPs and singles from kind of around that era, and it's got some kind of formulaic rhythms of most dance music. I enjoy it for what it is. I don't think it's as strong as his other albums and his other compilation album. We'll get to that later. But it's still a compelling, less self-indulgent than Drugs, I'd say. But pretty compulsory listen for anyone who thinks themselves as an Aphex Twin fan.
I will agree with most of what Louis said. I think that this EP under Aphex, while I think it's fantastic across the board, especially with a lot of its production, taking a lot of influence from the kind of old styles of a lot of IDM and acid techno, it just kind of falls flat for me when talking about Aphex Twins' discography, as it fails to engage me for a bit of it, but there definitely are more standout tracks. It's a bit formulaic in that sense, but honestly, I'd probably be repeating what Louis said. So all you have to know is that I think it's just I think it's a good EP, just not top tier for Aphex or Aphex Twin, and I'd be interested to check out more of Aphex stuff, honestly.
Yes.
Alright, best tracks on Drugs. April 14th, Vord Husbn, Mount St. Michel, Biddibidikin Chord, Taking Control, Nano 2, Meltface 6. My least favorite track was Gvarak 2.
Try saying all that 5 times fast.
No.
Absolutely not.
I don't blame you.
Go. Louis.
Go. Probably best tracks: Phoenix Funk 5, Picard, Crying in Your Face, and Silo Nen. Least favorite track probably XMD 5A and Batine Acid.
Okay, my favorite track from Chosen Lords is Phoenix Funk. My least favorite would probably be PW Steel.LD Pinch.D.
Really? That's my favorite AFX track.
It didn't really do much for me, aside from the other ones, but enough about that. It's time to go on to number 7.
My number 7 pick was Come to Daddy.
My number 7 pick was Cyril.
My number 7 pick was Drux.
Drux. I was expecting someone would kind of hype up Drux. I was expecting at least one person to have it in like their top 4.
Not really.
A lot of people do really love this album.
Yeah, loads of people like.
A lot of people suck it off, but I don't.
Yeah, like I think I posted my ranking in the community that I'm in, and people were just like, "Why the fuck is Drux this low?" And
yeah,
I guess it's more popular than I expected it to be. So I don't know.
It is. I mean, look, it's kind of weird that April 14th is his most popular song, like most known song.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
So clearly the album has something going for it.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about Drux, Michael, do you want to start?
Actually, yeah, sure.
It's a good transition.
A great transition, actually.
That's a class transition.
Yeah, so Drux, I think that it is a great album. This album is essentially a culmination of everything Richard has done up to this point. I see like a combination of stuff that probably would have been on Selected Ambient Works, the first one, and maybe some stuff that would have been on Richard D. James' album. But there's a lot more kind of organic style instrumentation thrown into the mix as well. Most notably pianos, but like Louis said, they're like coded in MIDI. And this album, to me, it comes off as a little bit messy and a little bit disjointed, just as the song titles, but there is plenty of brilliant material on this album, more in the first half in my opinion. The second half kind of drags on a slight bit. The second half just loses me a bit, and I just feel like these tracks are kind of samey, and there's just a lot more tracks that are like standing out to me on the first disc, and a lot of them just feel way too short for my liking. But with that being said, there's some incredible Aphex Twin tracks on here. I think there's some of the best material from Aphex Twin's catalog are on this album, and I haven't got much else to say. I just think it's a pretty great Aphex Twin project, just not my favorite.
I'll go with Come to Daddy now.
Okay.
I think it opens up with a brilliant track in the Come to Daddy, the first mix of that song, which is honestly the only version that I really care much for. Then it goes on to Flim, which is like my second favorite Aphex Twin track of all time. But then everything that happens in between up until the closer, which I do like, is just a bit too disjointed, a bit too rough, and not very standout. And, you know, the EP as a whole kind of suffers because of this. It's hard for me to rank it above, you know, some of the more complete albums that I did put above this. But considering it is a short album, it's an EP, and, you know, it's not that much of a commitment to listen through. I think the highlights definitely make it worth it, and overall I still think it's one of his more essential works, if only because of the first mix of Come to Daddy and Flim.
Now, for my number 7 pick, I picked Cyril. Cyril this is kind of the point where all the albums above this, they're kind of equally ranked the same for me, because they're all fucking great. And this is where it really starts. Cyril is very fucking good. Not technically his most innovative album, right? But it is incredibly engaging, and it's more of a return to form while still sounding really unique and different from his other albums. The best kind of album I can compare it to maybe is Richard D. James' album. Not quite as experimental, not quite as kind of, how do you say, hyper, I guess. But it's a solid piece, and it's kind of more of a return to his older kind of work. I think it fits well with his discography, though the titles are incredibly impossible to list, and I cannot wait to list my best tracks, because it's going to be a disaster. But I'd say this is definitely this beginning of where all his work after this is just fucking fantastic. Cyril, number 7.
We'll do the best and worst tracks in the same order we did the albums, but then we'll go back to the normal order.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah. Okay, my favourite tracks from Drux. Oh god, pray for me, because I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of these fucking titles.
That's not that bad. No, you have that. That's fine. I have Cyril.
For Bojbin, Omiya, Switch 7, Gweli Mernens, Cock, April 14th, Mount St. Michal, Mix, St. Michael's Mount, Guaric 2, Zygomatic version 17, and Nanny 2. My least favourite track is Taking Control.
My favourite...
Nah. Sorry.
My favourite tracks on Come to Daddy were Come to Daddy Pappy Mix, Flim, and Is Us. My least favourites were Funny Little Man and Come to Daddy Mummy Mix.
Wow. My favourite tracks on Cyril will have to be Mini Pop 67, 4-bit 90 API plus E plus 6 126.26.
Bruh, he really spit in algebra.
ISAT Sana 102. Cyro U4 7328 plus E 141.98 piezo-luminescence mix. And Pseudo Tim Time Stretch plus E plus 3. My least favourite track's probably 180 decibel and Product 29.
The funniest part is there's no way anyone can listen to a single word he just said.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The rain was just
advanced Welsh.
funny long time.
Spit straight facts and fucking binary.
Ask anyone what Louis' favourite tracks on Cyril are right now, and they don't remember.
Oh yeah. Come on, man, you haven't heard of fucking
the Wi-Fi
Circle
password
16A141? Yeah, that one. Yeah, bro, S950TX with 16 WASR 10. Hell yeah, Earth Portal mix. Not the other one, that one's
Bro,
shit.
is that your new graphics card? No, it's my favourite Aphex Twin track.
Fuck off.
Okay, I think we should move on to number 6. Go on.
My number 6 pick
Yes.
is Cyril.
My number 6 pick has Come to Daddy.
My number 6 pick is also Come to Daddy.
I think out of our first 4
Synchronicity.
picks, we've had the same 4 albums. I don't think anyone has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've just swapped them
It's
around.
kind of conclusive. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I think Cyril is a brilliant album and it brings some fantastic ideas to the table. But the complaint that I've heard about this album for years now is that it's just sounds like his older stuff. There's nothing innovative about it. And it does sound like a lot of his older stuff. It does sound very indicative of albums like Richard D. James' album, like you said. But that doesn't mean that this album isn't fantastic and entertaining, and just because it's not progressive and because it's not like at a left field for Richard, I think it still does what he does well, very acidy, drill and bassy IDM, which is still as complex, still as atmospheric at times, still as abrasive as it always has been. And just because it sounds like some of his older stuff, I don't think it makes the album suffer. I think maybe it's harder to rank this above some of the other albums because of that, but I still think as its own entity, it's a must-hear album, and it's fantastic. It has some great ideas, some great soundscapes, and if you're not comparing it to his older stuff, it's great.
Now, I picked Come to Daddy for my number 6 pick, and I think the best way to describe this album is short and sweet. It came off the back of Richard D. James' album, and I think it's kind of in the same light and sound as that. This has Flim on it, which is, as Michal said, and I will say myself, probably one of my favourite Aphex Twin tracks altogether.
So simple, but
it's just
so amazing.
Yeah. I also really like the Pappy mix of Come to Daddy, like you. It's intense. It's very kind of odd and strange in that beautiful Aphex Twin way. Definitely on a list for one of the best cover albums, or not cover albums, album arts, album covers,
favorite
whatever.
Christmas albums.
You watch a man bump into fucking Come to Daddy Pappy mix on fucking Christmas.
Hell yeah. Has it's got its moments of calm and beauty in between. It's an essential EP as well, I think. Very good. I like it a lot. It is number 6.
I like it a lot.
Better than Cyril. I like
Okay.
For years,
that above Cyril.
for years I thought the title was Film, and anytime I typed it into like YouTube or whatever, like this was way years ago before I had Spotify, when I would type it into YouTube, if I typed in Aphex Twin Film, it would still come up. So I never learned my lesson, so I just kept typing in Film and it kept showing up. I only realized after like 4 years that it's been called Flim the whole time, and it was the weirdest moment of my life.
Oh shit.
Well, don't forget, I always thought the opening track on Saw 1 was called Extal. So it could be worse.
No, and similarly, the Nirvana song Sliver. For years I read that as Silver, and anytime I looked it up, it would come up. So yeah, there's my small brain.
Welcome to the Taped Podcast, the most dyslexic podcast in the world.
The most mentally ill podcast in the world.
Okay, I chose Come to Daddy, and I think this is an essential part of Aphex Twins' discography. It does a fairly good job at staying great for the short runtime that it's on, and it brings us some absolutely fantastic tracks, in my opinion. Especially Flim. I only realised now that was from the memes that I've seen from like fucking 2 years ago. I was like, oh shit, this is I heard this before already. I fucking lost my shit. And it's now one of my favourite Aphex Twin songs. And Come to Daddy, the Pappy remix is just masterpiece. Especially with the music video. The music video is weird as fuck. And
no shit.
I have to say, it's slowly becoming my favourite album cover as well, just because of how fucking weird and creepy it is.
It's so stupid.
It's so stupid.
In my opinion,
I sent it to someone who was unaware.
It's not as good as Window
I
Licker.
sent it the cover art to someone who like doesn't know this shit, and they were just weirded out by it. They just questioned me for the whole fucking few hours that I was playing online with them, and they're just like, "What the fuck are you on?" But without that.
Did you then afterwards show them Window Licker?
I did. I fucking did. And they were very intimidated and horny at the same time. And all I have to say is, mission accomplished. But
I have a funny story.
can I finish? Can I finish?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it's pretty creepy, especially with some of the samples that are being used. But there are some amazing tracks on here, which I will get to in a bit. But there are other tracks that just a little bit too weird for me. Like Funny Little Man is just okay. Like why would you make this?
Schizophrenic.
Literally. But all in all, I feel like it's an important part of Aphex Twins' discography, and yeah, that's all I really have to say. It's essential for me, and there are some fantastic tracks on here, some of which are in Richard's catalogue as the best.
Well, I was going to say I have a funny story about how I even found out about Aphex Twin years ago, but I'll
say the funny.
I'll wait till we get to an album that relates to it.
Say the funny.
But remind me.
I will.
Okay.
Number 5.
No, we have to do the best or worst tracks.
No, we're best
Oh
tracks.
yeah, small brain.
Come on, man. Podcast
No, I was just
format.
like
You blacked out for a
unconscious.
minute.
No, I was subconsciously trying to not have to pronounce
You've
the
been drinking
Cyril
again.
tracks.
You've been drinking again.
My
yeah?
favorite. No,
Back on the
I've been
heroin.
listening to Aphex Twin. I don't know which is worse. My favorite tracks on Cyril were Mini Pop 67 Source Field Mix, Xmas Eve 10 T10 Thanaton 3 Mix, Product 19, Circlon T6A, Syrah Bonkers Mix, Cyro U47 3T8 plus E, Piezoluminescence Mix. And my least favorite track was probably 180 decibels _.
Spitting straight facts to source code.
My favorite
Perhaps.
tracks. My favorite tracks off Come to Daddy are Flynn for sure, Come to Daddy Pappy Mix, and Booch Phallus Bouncing Ball. My least favorite, probably Funny Little Man and Cure Weakling Child Contour Regard, mainly because it's not as good as the version on Richard D. James' album, or it was on the other one. I can't remember. Fuck. Anyways,
Richard D. James.
yeah.
Alright, my favourite tracks from Come to Daddy are Come to Daddy Pappy Mix, Flim, Bucephalus Bouncing Ball, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Fuck My Life, and Is Us. My least favourite track is Funny Little Man.
No one found the man funny.
This is not funny.
Poor little man.
This is a PSA. This is not funny.
Rip Little Man. Not funny.
You just posted cringe. This is not funny.
Let's get on to number 5.
Please don't.
Number 5, okay, go on.
My number 5
Oh, here we go,
is
lads.
Classics.
Oh! Okay, sorry. Just had to get that out. My number 5 pick is Selected Ambient Works 2.
Ooh. My pick is I Care Because
Spice.
You Do.
Fair enough.
Mine is the least controversial out of all of you.
Interesting. Yeah, yours is fine. Yours is fine.
All right, I'll. Should I start?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's fucking
All
hear
right.
it, Michal.
Classics fucking kicks ass. It's awesome. It's for a compilation. It's pretty cohesive and pretty cohesive as a listening experience and as an album. And just when comparing it to some of the actual like studio albums, I just would have a hard time putting this above them. That being said, it's a fantastic album. Comparing it to Selected Ambient Works 1 and 2, it's definitely more abrasive, more hard-hitting. It's rougher, it's meaner, and even though it's a compilation, as I said, it's quite indicative of a certain era of Aphex Twin, and it does kind of work as a cohesive unit. It definitely, if you only heard the studio albums up until that point, it would have been a bit of a left field turn, as in it's a lot more rough and acid techno-y, kind of indicative of is it green calcs or blue calcs on Selected Ambient Works?
Green
calcs, yeah.
Green calcs.
And
Fucking blue calcs.
it's definitely indicative of stuff on that you would have heard on Come to Daddy, Window Licker, a lot more hard-hitting IDM. And it's a fantastic album. I think it holds up really well along with his other, early 90s stuff. It's very cutting edge, very influential, and really the only reason it's so low in my rankings is because I just love his studio albums.
I hate you.
I literally gave like no complaints there, so.
Yeah, but I'm angry. You upset me. Okay. So, my number 5 pick. my number 5 pick was Selected Ambient Works Volume 2. Now, this album is... I'm going to say it, Mick. I'm going to fucking say it. This puts the ambient in Selected Ambient Works.
I had that in my... Before any of you said that, I also had that...
I said it first.
I also had that in my notes as well, before any of you said it in Discord. I had... What?
That is fucked. We all had the same sentence. Of course.
The name is
amazing.
No, in my notes I wrote the name is definitely more suitable than it was for his previous release.
Oh,
You didn't say the exact same sentence.
Yeah, but we all mentioned the title.
Yeah, but still.
You see, me and Louis know what's up, Michal.
Bruh.
Yeah, great minds think alike, or just
Great minds listen to number 13.
same thing. Yeah, all day, every day, without
Right,
stop. But anyways, this album puts the ambient in Ambient Works, but it's the most weird thing he's ever put out. It's kind of like best way to describe it would be a soundtrack to like a Lovecraftian horror show. It's kind of grandiose in some instances. It's rarely optimistic or happy. Generally very creepy sounding and atmospheric, like a really good horror film soundtrack. Kind of fitting into a Silent Hill game, even. Wouldn't listen to it at night in a forest or anything like that because I would shit myself. I can compare it to Philip Glass a bit. It's sort of minimalistic in some aspects, otherworldly and occasionally nightmarish. I like it. I love it. Better than Cyril, better than Come to Daddy, because of how unique and different it is to all his other albums. But compared to the top 4, I prefer them over this album because I feel like it kind of drags on during the second disc and can become a little bit boring. But apart from that, this album is incredibly good and a must listen for anybody into any sort of ambient kind of work. Ambient works, funny, piss off.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Just because you brought up Silent Hill there, can we just take this moment in time to say fuck Konami, because they're just bastards?
Fuck Konami.
Bruh, fuck
Fuck
Konami.
you, Konami.
Yeah.
Cunts.
Fuck
We're calling you out, cunt. Huh?
Fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! Looking ass.
Fuck you. It's racist, bro.
Re-
Man, the podcast is gonna get cancelled. Shit.
Release Silent Hill,
Dude.
the new Silent Hill now, you fucking bastards. Any
They don't have it, you ape.
anyway,
They didn't make it. They were just like, fuck
make it
you,
then release it then. Okay.
Suck my dick.
Anyway, I put I Care Because You Do, the third studio album from Aphex Twin, and I think this album is very good, especially when it comes to Aphex Twin, as this is one of his fairly more experimental approaches to the sounds that he touched on in both Selected Ambient Work albums, while also making it sound very abrasive. The bass is pretty thudding on it, it's very loud, and on this album in particular, it's pretty haunting, and at times it can be pretty harsh as well. I feel like this works to Richard's advantage, as we do get a solid track list with pretty memorable moments, and some of the best tracks that Aphex Twin may have to offer in his discography. I like this LP a lot, but I couldn't help but feel that there were some tracks that felt a bit watered down from some of the stuff that he toyed with. And Ventolin just made me deaf, not gonna lie. And all in all, I think it's a great album, and it's definitely a top 5 record for me when it comes to Aphex Twin. But there's other albums I prefer, and this is a must listen in his discography for sure for me.
Alright, best and worst tracks. My favourite tracks on classics were Didgeridoo, Polynomial C, Analog Bubble Bath 1, Flaphead, and my least favourite track was Floem.
What? Really?
have
That's
opinion.
spicy.
I really liked Flow.
That's spicy.
I really like
So
Flow.
do I.
I understand.
I hate you. Fuck you.
I
It's
don't
okay.
hate you, but goddamn.
Fuck this guy. Get rid of
It's
him.
okay.
Get him off the podcast. No. Get him
We're
off
talking about Aphex Twin. 5 is like
Nostalgia. Nostalgia.
number 1
I
for
don't-
any other artist.
Bro.
Nostalgia. I don't hate you at all, but like,
Bro.
come on, man.
Fuck you.
I don't hate you, I just wish you would
I don't hate
die.
you. Fuck you. It's different. It's different.
Go on, Louis.
Alright, you give us your tracks, come on.
Okay, I'm sorry, bro.
Bruh.
My favourite tracks off of Selected Ambient Works Part 2 are number 4, number 7, number 12, on disc 2, number 6, and number 9.
Number 9?
Probably least favourite, maybe 11 and 3.
Alright, my favourite tracks off of I Care Because You Do are Accurate Avid Jam Shred, Wax the Nip, Icht Hedgerel, Come On You Slags, Alberto Balsam, and Calcutta is a twin. I can't speak! Calcutta is a twin,
stroke.
and my least favourite track is Ventolin because I am now deaf.
Alright, number 4.
Top 4.
My number 4 pick was I Care Because You Do.
My number 4 pick was Richard D. James' album.
My number 4 pick was Select the Ambient Works Volume 2.
I'll start again. I think that I Care Because You Do was an interesting evolution in Richard D. James' sound, and while it is mostly a very enjoyable and aesthetically very interesting album, there are some areas where it's a bit too rough around the edges for me. First, for the positives, which I have to say definitely vastly outweigh the negatives here. It has a more jagged, more glitchy sound that was kind of hinted on previous releases, like on Select Track on Selected Ambient Works Volume 1 and on Classics, but never really to the extent that he delved into it on a studio album, as it is present here. Yet there are still a lot of more ambient, more atmospheric tracks, which makes for a very diverse, very vast array of tracks, which kind of, I think it's his first really diverse album. Now for the few issues I have with the album is, it doesn't really have that much for me in terms of cohesion. I think in a lot of cases one track just kind of moves on to the next without any sort of transition, and some of the transitions do feel awkward between tracks. There are tracks that are just awful. There's one track that's awful, but a lot of the tracks have this really distorted, warped percussion, and it just sounds really rough, hard to listen to, hard to enjoy, and really rough. And there is one track in particular that I'm definitely looking at right now.
I think I know which one you're on about.
I wonder which
yeah,
one
I
that
think
is.
you both know it.
I wonder.
I do want to. I'll tell the story now since it kind of has something to do with this album. I was like 12 when I found Aphex Twin, and I was just looking at fucking just Pokemon shite or something about Lavender Town theme that supposedly caused all those Japanese kids to kill themselves. And it was this like fake creepypasta video of someone like looking at the audio file for Lavender Town theme, and in the audio fucking like the waves, there was like hidden images, and one of the hidden images was just the cover for I Care Because You Do. and in the video it was like there is a demon hidden in the in the audio of Lavender Town theme question mark. This is proof that this song is haunted. There is a demon in the actual music. And then 12-year-old me was like, that's fucking stupid. So I looked it up and I found out it was the album cover of an Aphex Twin album. And I listened to I didn't actually start with this album. I listened to some Aphex Twin though, and I really liked it. And that's where my journey began, because of fucking Pokemon creepypasta.
Jesus.
Well,
For fuck's sake.
I'll try and find the image. It's so fucking stupid.
I really do wanna. I wanna see that with my own eyes. That sounds fucked.
in the
Really
meantime, talk about Richard
yeah, while you're
James'
doing
album.
Yeah, go for it.
Why are you doing that? Number 4, Richard D. James' album. It's quick, it's fast-paced, the beats are jackhammer quick, and it's fucking jarring. This album is great. I like it for how kind of ridiculously quick and maddening it is. The cover kind of says it all. This is like he's gone a little bit insane around the synths and the drum beats and the bass, and it's just kind of doing whatever the fuck he wants, and he's on cocaine or something. I don't know. It's just incredibly listenable, and kind of its length kind of suits how quick it is, but it doesn't feel short at all for being 37 minutes. Like, it's a perfectly paced album, you could say. It's more extreme than I Care Because You Do in its kind of instrumentation and beats. There's hardly any slow-moving melodies to be found here. I think this is quintessential weird shit music that anyone... I mean, you definitely... This is one of those albums that you need to listen to before you die, for sure. And that's why it's my number 4 pick.
Either before you die or as you die.
As you die. As you die.
No, that's just playing while you have a fucking heart attack.
Oh yeah, playing Yellow Counts.
Logan Rockwood.
Oh yeah, yes.
Just there having a stroke and
passing away.
Okay,
Fuck's sake.
alright, my number 4 pick was Selected Ambient Works Volume 2. The sophomore album from Aphex Twin, and like me and Louis said before, it really puts the ambient into Selected Ambient Works. It puts a...
It's so shit.
It puts a lot more emphasis on the
Dog line.
ambient soundscapes than its predecessor, and it creates a great batch of tracks in its discography, each going through their own different kind of moods and atmospheres. Like, you get tracks that have dark ambience to them, or you'll get some tracks that are just like serene and almost beautiful in a way. For the 2-disc album that's nearly 3 hours long, it's very well structured and very cohesive, while at the same time remaining varied and diverse in its sounds. The issue that I have with it, though, is its length. It is asking a lot from the listener. The amount of tracks that are on here is just jarring in a way. There isn't a single bad track on here, but the tracks that are amazing completely outshine the less notable ones. Plus, I don't want to sit through fucking 3 hours of inactivity during my music, so yeah. Also, disc 1 is better than disc 2.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I
You're
agree.
not wrong. In fact,
Yeah.
you're correct.
Alright. Everyone did talk about theirs.
Yeah.
My favorite tracks on
Top 3.
I Care Because You Do
Oh,
were
yeah.
Alberto Balsam, Acid, Avid, Jam
Yes.
Shred, Moo Kid,
Yes.
Cow Kid is a Twin, Wax the Nip. My least favorite tracks were Start As You Mean to Go On, and my least favorite Aphex Twin song, Ventolin.
Yeah.
Is that a cliche pick? I'm sure it is, but holy shit, that's borderline unlistenable.
My favourite tracks of the Richard D. James album are Cornish Acid, Finger Bib, To Cure a Weakling Child, and Girl Boy Song. My least favourite, it's fucking hard to pick, but it'd have to be Yellow Kelps, I think. Which by no means it's bad, because it is a good track. It's just my least favourite on that.
That's fair. We're in the top 3 now! We've made it!
This is dangerous territory now. This is where people
This is
get
where
angry.
life get lost.
This is where I have a heart attack.
Yes.
Alright.
Right.
This is where Mick dies. This is the final episode.
My number 3 pick is Richard D. James album.
Ooh. My number 3 pick is I Care Because You Do.
My number 3 pick is Richard D. James' album.
Ooh. Maybe I'll start with Louis. So since me and Mick have the same.
Yeah, because I'm the unique boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Special.
So I Care Because You Do. This is his most consistent album, in my opinion. Kind of uses his earlier hardcore techno with more smooth rhythm and atmosphere of his ambient stuff. Ventolin, I will agree, is fucking harsh on the ears. But I kind of feel like it has some sort of merit being on the album and kind of contributes to the kind of weird shit that Aphex Twins kind of comes out with occasionally. I think it works well. Alberto Balsam is probably my favourite Aphex Twin song out of his whole discography. I love the electronic kind of weirdness on it. Same with Wax and Nip and Acrid Avid Jam Shred. It's fucking annoying to say. Can you not just like name stuff normally? No?
Sure, that's like
Listen to music.
trademark for
But,
Aphex
fair.
Twin. That's trademark for Aphex Twin. Name it
Cut.
weird.
Kinda, yeah. another contender for best album art of all time. I really enjoy. It's a fun album to listen to. It's enjoyable. It's paced well. The instrumentation is fun and exciting, and it has its kind of high-paced or fast-paced, quick moments, and then more slower and ambient pieces. It's just a really kind of good blend of everything he's ever done, put into one great album. That's why it's at number 3.
Right, Richard D. James. To me, this is just a more cohesive and overall successful execution of some of the more harsher and sinister tracks on like Here Because You Do. I think the short length really plays to this album's strength. It's just so fast-paced, so easy to digest, so in your face, and there's just no filler on this album. Every track is great, I think. Maybe except for one, but I'll get into that. And it's just a perfectly concise Aphex Twin experience with all the speedy, complex, drum and bassy, ethereal ambience and, really wacky, unorthodox ideas you would ever want from Aphex Twin, all jammed into half an hour without ever feeling disjointed or awkward. And overall, it's an amazing album.
All right, yeah, I chose Richard D. James' album as well, and I pretty much agree with everything that Nostalgia had to say about it. The way that I see it, I think this album is very concise with its short track list and its relative runtime. I think that, Aphex Twin toys with a lot of obscure drum patterns on this album, making it more fast-paced, making it sound completely jittery, and especially when he speeds up the patterns, and it's pretty unique. It sounds pretty unique in Aphex Twin's discography. The melodies that he chooses are pretty great most of the time. Some of them can be pretty obscure, some of them can be pretty dark, like the samples he uses on the final track, for example, are pretty weird. And there's often moments where, at times, it could come off as, just very terrifying in a way, but it's put together so well, it just keeps me engaged. And like we mentioned, the track list length works to its advantage, makes it more concise, but at the same time, it kind of leaves me wanting more. But, with that being said, great album, top 3, let's go.
Hell yeah.
With best tracks.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Well, I'll go first. We'll do it in the usual order. My favorite tracks on Richard D. James' album were 4, Finger Bib, To Cure a Weakling Child, Girl Boy Song, Yellow Calcs, and a track which I used to not really like, but has really grown on me over the years, Logan Rock Witch. And my least favorite track was probably Goon Goompas, which is still an okay track.
Oh, yeah, shit. Okay, favorite tracks on I Care Because You Do. Acrid Avid Jam Shred Wax the Pip. Nip, sorry.
The Pip.
I love Ventolin. Oh. Alberto Balsam, Calcutta's Twin, and Wet Tip Hen Axe. Least favorite track. I think it's Ventolin.
You can't lie to yourself.
Alright, my favourite tracks from Richard D. James' album are 4, Peak 82454201, Finger Bib, Karen Marth, Yellow Calcs, and Girl Boy Songs. My least favourite track is To Cure a Weakling Child. Top 2!
Now, we're in the top 2, lads. This is where it gets dangerous.
Yeah, I already know what you're going to pick, Louis, don't worry.
Yeah, I know too.
Okay,
my number 2 pick is Selected Ambient Works 2.
My number 2 pick is Selected Ambient Works 8.
I fucking knew it. My number 2 pick is Classics.
I'll start with. I think this album is.
Start talking, boy.
I mean, I knew what to expect, but no one who's listening has any idea.
We knew this. Me and Nostalgia knew this for a long time, but you're only finding out now, so I know you're currently having an aneurysm.
Right, Selected Ambient Works 2. Right. This album is massive in every sense of the word. at 2 hours and 36 minutes, it's really quite a commitment to, sit down and listen to this whole thing from start to finish. But sometimes, Soundtracks for the Blind, the biggest commitments are the most rewarding albums, and this is, for me, definitely one of those experiences. It's definitely Aphex Twins' most ambient and atmospheric album, definitely more ambient than Selected Ambient Works 8592, which is barely even ambient. Maybe but all the 24 tracks on this explore really unique, ominous and lush abstract soundscapes that just always floor me. Usually with an ambient record, you can kind of put it on as really pleasant background noise and just kind of have the music soaking in the background as you're doing whatever. But you don't really want to have fucking number 4 or anything like that as background noise. This is really an album you have to give your attention to and get lost in that way. And you have to be in a specific mood. You definitely have to be in a specific mood to fucking listen to 20. But when you're in that mood, I don't think it's just amazing. It's incredible. The soundscapes that he explores are just so abstract, so weird, so genius. It's just a fantastic record, and it's a standout in his discography, and it's one of the best ambient albums of all time, one of the best electronic albums of all time. It's a huge accomplishment in electronic music.
Yeah, my number 2 pick, Selected Ambient Works 8592. Between this and Classics, this was impossible to choose from because they're both undisputed masterpieces. But I've had to put this one at number 2. I think the most interesting thing about this is the fact that some of these recordings are as early as 1985. Nothing, and I mean nothing, sounded like this at the time, and nothing has compared to it since. This is probably the most unique album of all time, if not just in the electronic kind of music sphere. You can definitely hear a lot of influences from artists like Tangerine Dream on this. It's just kind of not only subtle and just completely chill, but beautiful, atmospheric to a point, not very ambient. I'll agree with you on that when you were talking about it before, Michal. But it's his most fully realized album. It's got kind of a wide range of like high energy, kind of low gravity sort of chill songs and slow pace kind of slow burners. I think it's the perfect starting album for anyone trying to get into Aphex Twin. It gives a great kind of scope for how he can weirdly craft music out of just this. I don't know where he gets it from. It's just fucking magic. Guy's incredibly talented. And it's just kind of like this oral spiral of just joy and happiness. It's just great to listen to. And that's why it is at number 2.
Alright, well, my number 2 pick was Classics. A compilation project that it doesn't really feel like much of a compilation at all. It feels like it's its own separate entity. I see this album in a similar vein to Selected Ambient Works 8592, but this time Classics has a lot more of an abrasive, harsh, more of a hard-hitting sound, and more of an embrace of acid techno, if anything else. There are some top-tier Aphex Twin tracks on here, some of which are some of the best and more unique in his catalogue. Sounds on here are pretty cohesive. They make it a whole cohesive unit. There's so many fucking amazing sounds on here. Sounds like I could just like bob my head to like all the time. There's just I just love the kind of a harsh and aggressive nature of this one. The only issue is that there may be a couple of tracks that don't stand out to me as much as the highs that are on this record, because this record has a lot of highs for me. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. I think Classics is great. It's kind of underappreciated in a way.
Okay, my favorite tracks on Selected Ambient Works 2 were 1, aka Cliffs, 2, aka Radiator, 4, aka Hanky, 13, aka Blue Calx, 17, aka Z-Twig, 19, aka Hexagon, and 20, aka Lichen. My favorite track though, and possibly a contender for my favorite Aphex Twin track of all time is number 3, Rhubarb. My least favorite tracks were number 16, Grey Stripe, and number 23, aka White Blur 2.
My favourite tracks up of selected Ambient Works 8592 are, and I'm going to fucking say it, Xtal, That, Aegopolis, We Are the Music Makers, Plot Me, Green Calcs, He Just Found, basically every track on the album bar Actium. It's the only one I'm not really that
How do you
fond
actually
of.
pronounce Xtal?
Crystal.
Ah!
Crystal. But it's just like, how? It's got an X in it, it's the fucking...
Okay, my favourite tracks off of classics are Didgeridoo, Flaphead, Floam, Isopropanol, Polynomial, Tamphex, Metapharstic, and my least favourite track, God help me to pronounce this, Dodecahedron.
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 What the fuck? Cathedral, fuck off. Let's see.
Alright,
Cathedral.
we made it. Number 1 picks, boy.
Right. This is it.
My number 1
No
pick
matter what.
is selected Ambient Works 85 to 92.
My number 1 pick is classics.
My number 1 pick is Selected Ambient Works 8592. Maybe you can go first, since you
I
picked
think-
classics.
Yeah, we'll give Louis the
I'll
spotlight.
go first, seeing as I'm the odd one out here. Okay, listen, this is the quintessential Aphex Twin album. I don't consider this a compilation album at all. It doesn't feel like a compilation album. And more than half of this is just original stuff he made for this album, not just singles from the past. It's a perfect companion piece to Selected Ambient Works 8592, where that one's more calm and peaceful. This one is abrasive, in your face, true kind of rave, acid techno, harsh noise, which is why I love it. It's got thunderous beats, incredible instrumentation, fantastic drum and bass. It's just, from start to finish, it's just a journey, an adventure. And it's one of the proper Aphex Twin albums you could play at like a party or a rave and be like, yeah, this works. You know, there's not like a number 4 in there, or Logan Rock Witch. So it kind of keeps up this great pace throughout the whole thing. The sampling is fantastic, especially on stuff like Tampax and Floam in particular. Fucking great. This has incredible tracks like Didgeridoo, Analog Bubble Bath, Polynomial C, and Isopropanol. It's just, I cannot put into words how much I love this album. It is perfect in every way. It's a 10. Fuck. Whatever. If people think this is just like, it's just some compilation album, I don't listen, you're an idiot. Fuck you. I hate you. Listen to it, and you'll figure out on your own terms. This is the best Aphex Twin album. Now go suck yourselves
That's,
off about
quite
That is
Saul.
a bold
Very
fucking
Suck yourself off
claims
about
here
Saul.
from the man himself, Louis.
Bold claims,
Alright.
but it's
In
correct.
your opinion, this is
I'll
subject
start
to
with
Go suck off Saul 592.
I'll start
Say
with
that like you don't
with
suck
Selected
off
Ambient
classics,
Works.
though.
This man.
This was derailing.
Go on, nostalgia. Go ahead, please.
1v1 me, bro.
Yeah. Even with all the brilliant and groundbreaking albums that Aphex Twin has released throughout the years, I still think his debut outshines everything in my eyes. It features some of the most cutting-edge, incredible electronic music ever made, and it just does not sound like anything ever made prior to it. Sure, you know, there are definitely some inspirations. There's definitely some from genres like minimal synth and Berlin house, but what he brought and created on this album is just so unique, so cutting edge, so ahead of its time. It's mysterious, it's ethereal, it's complex, it's unsettling, it's just perfect. It's a perfect electronic album in my eyes. It's mind-blowing. It's perfect. I think that it's his masterpiece, and I always think it's going to be his masterpiece. I don't think there's ever going to be a better IDM album in the whole genre. I think IDM peaked in 1992.
Ditto. The debut album from Aphex Twin, in my opinion, is the quintessential ambient techno and IDM album. it's not even that ambient of an album, but it just works so well with what it does. The production on this album is incredible for its time. It's extremely innovative for electronic music as a whole. The ethereal ambience and the chilling nature is just an amazing combination, and given the technology that this was made on back then, it's just fucking amazing. Like, and plus, given how young Richard was when he made some of these tracks, is just mind-blowing to me as well. It almost sounds like you're floating in space when listening to it. You know, you have ascended to the next plane of existence. I want to know what this sounds like when I'm stoned or some shit. I need to find out. I want to know this. Because this album is it's just next level. There's so many...
It's going to take heroin and listen to X album on repeat and see what happens.
There's so many great and iconic tracks on this album as well. Some of the best tracks ever made. Some of the best tracks that IDM and electronic music has to offer ever. It's amazing how it outstands most electronic music ever and in the modern era. And all in all, I just couldn't bring myself to put it anywhere lower than Aphex Twins' best. I love a lot of his albums. I think he has some amazing stuff. But Selected Ambient Works 8592 is the fucking T.
Don't ever say that again on this podcast. That was beyond cringe.
I don't care.
Oh, I'm so glad I'm leaving after this. Fuck you.
I don't care.
I'll start with the best tracks on Selected Ambient Works 1.
I don't care.
My favourite tracks were Crystal, Tha, Scott Key 7th Path, Heliospan, Aegis Paulus, Delphium, and We Are the Music Makers. And my least favourite track is Green Calx, because I think it kind of ruins the flow of the album.
It's a good track.
It sounds like a track off Classics. I like the track. It just sounds like it should be on Classics or something.
Yeah. He's saying that like it's derogatory. That's racist. Should be on Classics. Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Bruh. Right, go ahead, Louis.
Oh yeah, shit. Okay, my favourite tracks off of Classics. Didgeridoo, Flathead, Floam, Isopropanol, Polyliminal C, Tamphax, Flange Face, Dodecahedron, Analog Bubble Buff, Metaphoristic, We Have Arrived, QQT Mix, We Have Arrived, TTQ Mix, and Didgeridoo Live in Cornwall 1990. It's the whole album.
Okay,
You could have just said the whole album.
No picks that are bad.
Alright, my favourite...
No.
You had to flex.
My favourite tracks from Selected Ambient Works 8592 are Crystal, Thaw, Pulsewidth, Aegis Polis, Heliospan, We Are the Music Makers, Scotchy 7 Path, Ptolemy, and Headfilm. My least favourite track is Delphium.
Alright.
We did it. We ranked every single album.
Guys,
Richard D. James, please come on our podcast.
We rank them from best to slightly less best. That's still fantastic.
Slightly less best to best.
Yeah.
Less best.
So, and that was fun. I had a good time. I had a good time doing this one.
You know, that's all that matters.
I had a bad time. I'm never coming back. This is horrible. You guys are mean, nasty.
Guys, this is Louis' last appearance on the TAPED podcast. Until next week.
Until next week, which we are doing a Sun Kill Moon worst to best. We have 2 guests coming on that episode as well, so that is going to be a very, very fun episode, so look out for that as well. And,
yeah.
But it won't be fun. It's Sun Kill Moon. It will be sad and depressing.
I listened to 3 of his albums today. How sad do you think I am right now?
Mark Kozelek is very, very sad and wants you to know about it. He wants you to know.
Well, anyway, with that being said, thanks so much for checking out today's episode of the Taped Podcast. Necessary links are in the description to our Rate Your Music, Album of the Years, our own individual channels, and all that sort of stuff. And
donate to my PayPal.
Donate to our Patreon.
Louis' PayPal me link is...
Patreon is there as well.
He needs to buy beer.
I will use it for crack.
all Patreon funding will go towards Louis' alcoholism.
And his drug addiction.
Finally.
And,
Finally.
Yeah. With that being said, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
all
With that, this is derailing.
all Patreon money will go towards Louis being able to listen to Selected Ambient Works while high on ketamine. We're actually gonna use him as a hamster, and we're gonna get him high on every single drug possible, and then get him to listen to Selected Ambient Works, and then document his experiences. So if you're interested in that, please fund it.
bro, get me 10 feet deep into a K-hole and just let me listen to selected ambience on repeat for like 2 hours.
So yeah, with that being said, thanks for watching, and see ya.
Bye.
Goodbye.